All right, ladies, so we just finished talking about a few things about ELA and our Module 2 and how things are going. We did some glows and about the week and just in some particular items we've been talking about. Today, I want to introduce to you our guest. She's not a guest, really. She's our family. Miss White is going to be showing us today how to really home in, work in, and perfect an exit ticket. I've been in Miss White's class quite a few times, and I'm in love with her exit tickets. Not to say I don't love yours, Miss Brown or Miss Booth, but Miss White has some really great exit ticket advice, and I wanted her to share it with the team. I hate that Miss Johnson could not be in here today, but I know she had a previous engagement. So I'm going to shift in just a minute so that Miss White can get up and show you guys some things on the board. Again, we're looking at how we can better design our exit tickets so that we could really get some great responses from students, so that we could gauge those responses in terms of modifying our teaching, but so that we'll have some really good exemplars. We want to build a toolbox of exemplars of good exit tickets and responses from students. Any questions before we get started? Ms. Booth, you have any questions?
No, not now.
Okay, you look lovely, Ms. Booth.
Well, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Brown, you have any questions?
Yeah, not now.
All right, so I'm just gonna move around a bit. Forgive me for making anyone that's watching this dizzy. Ms. White, you're gonna get on the spotlight, and I'm just gonna move to the back because you know I have this bad leg. And here we go. Speak loud and clear, please, because we have to talk over the milk cooler. So.
Okay, so I know last year Ms. Oliver Goodson rolled out this whole push for the implementation of exit tickets as a mandate at here at Bruns. So that being said, it rolled over into this year. So I'm briefly going to go over a simple way to incorporate an exit ticket in your class that's not that stressful. So I started out with my learning objective. Please excuse my handwriting; it's never neat. So whatever my learning objective is, that's the basis for my exit ticket. So my learning objective for today is I can, one, cite specific textual evidence to describe the decision Liddy has to make about whether or not to sign the petition.
Ms. White, can I stop you for just a second? Liddy is you guys' novel for Module 2, right?
Yes, it is. That is a 7th grade novel.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so my second learning objective for today is I can analyze one section of Liddy to deepen the understanding of Liddy's decision. So those are my two learning objectives, and that is at the end of this class what the student should be able to say that they have learned. And my exit ticket on my assessment is my way of figuring out whether or not the student actually was able to learn this objective. That being said, based on the results of my exit ticket, I will then analyze that data and determine what aspects of the lesson the student or students may or may not have gotten confused upon, therefore leading me to reteaching. So, two simple exit tickets that I use, simple, doesn't require too much work on the English teacher's part, would be an exit ticket such as the parking lot or a 3-2-1. So let's start with a parking lot.
Can we stop for just a second? I always like to pause to make sure that the participants are on the same page. Ladies, does anyone have any questions at this point?
What's the title of the book that you all are reading?
Just give... I know a little bit about Liddy because, of course, I've been digging into EL a lot. But your two colleagues here, because they're so engrossed in theirs, except for Miss Brown because she's with all the grade levels. If you could just tell, yep, just a elevator speech.
Okay, so Liddy is pretty much moving our unit. Well, she's the book that we're using, so entitled Liddy. We're focusing on the whole working conditions and working the treatment of workers within not only the United States but across the country, and how that has progressed from back then to current day. So using the book of Liddy, Liddy is a young lady about the age of 13, coming of age story, where she is trying to play the role of worker, and as well as the traditional role of a woman in the 1840s. So she has a dual role within that novel.
Yep.
We're stressing the working conditions, particularly within Liddy. That's our push. And as we look at the working conditions in Liddy, we're examining the effects of the worker and the need for change that evolved and pushed through this book itself.
Awesome. One thing I want to lift up, at some point I would love to come to your class to all of your classes one day for just a small frame of time. I make a connection to Lydia. I grew up in Halifax County, North Carolina, where the movie Norma Jean with Norma Ray, I'm sorry, I'm talking about Norma Jean. Norma Ray, it was based out of that county from the J.P. Stevens meal. So that movie was based out of that thing. So I just always, when we're talking about working conditions, we did this at another school that I was in. I help students make that connection with Norma Jean, not Norma Ray. Norma Ray, Norma Jean. It's Norma. Let's just say it's Norma, okay? All right. I'm sorry for getting you off track. Okay, here we go.
Like Norm.
Yeah, Norm.
Definitely that North Carolina connection might be a little bit more beneficial.
Okay.
To home. So my first one would be a parking lot. I would ask the students a question based on my learning objective. A simple question I could ask would be to take my learning objective and to make it into a question, such as how do we cite specific textual evidence to describe the decision Lydia has to make about whether to sign the petition or not. Students would each get a sticky. They would write their responses. As I was lining them up, they would place them on our parking lot, and they would exit my classroom. That's a simple way to do it. Another simple strategy I use is what I call the 3-2-1. This one takes a little bit more thought process on the student part, and I would definitely give my kids roughly 3 to 5 minutes minimum to answer this. They're going to write down 3 items listed on the Forming Evidence-Based Claims graphic organizer. Now the graphic organizer itself is incorporated in both of the skills that we were in our learning objectives for the day. The second item they would do is give me 2 learning objectives. They would have to briefly summarize or give me the gist of our learning objectives for the day, which are reviewed each day. And the last thing would be, if they had any questions about today's lesson, something that they were confused about, didn't understand, they would write that as their question for me that needed to be answered. So that's my 3, my 2, and my 1.
Can we stop here for just a moment, because I want to home in on Ms. Brown now. I'm going to kind of put her on the spot. Ms. Brown, what are some implications here or some barriers as it may relate to our EC students in either one of these methods that Ms. White has shown? Can you think of any? There may not be any, but just wanted to put that out there.
I think with all of them, it just depends on what they've taken away from the day. I think sometimes our kids, you're talking about 2 things. You're talking about things in the book, Liddy, and then you're talking about learning objectives. And I think because the learning objectives are more abstract,
right?
That learning, sometimes they can answer the questions about the book, but then they don't really comprehend the objective itself. You know, they can tell you something about Liddy that you're trying to get them to do. They might be able to cite evidence, but they may not be able to tell you how to cite evidence. And I don't think that's just for EC kids.
Yeah.
So.
What I definitely get what you're saying. So what I'm thinking is, because you and Ms. White work so closely together in terms of planning things, this would be a great opportunity that when you do sit down to plan your exit ticket, that you have that in mind and that you make some modifications for those students so theirs may look slightly different in terms of what we're asking them to do.
The other thing I would say with EC kids sometimes is they need to hear things over and over and over again. So if we've been working on citing evidence and how to do that since the beginning of school. So now if you ask them something about that, they can probably do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a new objective or a new strategy we're trying, it's going to take them a lot longer to be able to incorporate that. Been doing a graphic organizer writing strategy, and we've been doing it for I think we're on the 2nd week so that looks like this 5th or 6th lesson in it almost. And one of them looked at me the other day and said, "So can we use this when we write in other classes?" Yes. You can use this every time you write, you know, a paragraph.
Okay.
Kind of thing.
Good.
The trees, right?
What? Yeah, the trees.
Mm-hmm. All right, Miss White, if you could continue, please, and thank you, Miss Brown.
Oh, so I just gave you 2 easy ways to incorporate an exit ticket in your
Okay.
classroom. Ms. Booth, I know you're more technologically savvy than most, so I thought about you, and there's also electronic exit tickets that you could incorporate.
Can't really use those now.
Yeah, so
We're at time, well, we're gonna put the positivity out there that you will get some more from Project Lift. So Padlet. So as the kids are doing something online, you could create your Padlet and put your question based on your learning objective on there, and the kids just write a response and they can see it pop up on the screen.
Is it an app? What is it called?
It's Padlet.com.
P-A-T-L-E-T?
P-A-B-L-E-T.
So just as Miss Booth was in the flow of using technology so wisely with her students, they would be stolen at a time. But we're going to work to get you some more, Miss Booth. So go ahead, Miss Booth. I saw your hand. I'm sorry.
So the parking lot, you take it all off when the other kids come in and you look at them later on that day?
Yes, if I don't have time, what I do is I color code the sticky, so I know first block has one color, second block has another, third block, and I use that whiteboard one that's closest to the door.
Okay.
So they would like stick it on the door on their way out, and I would have multiple colors, and then I could just pull them off.
Okay.
So now let's push a little bit. Miss White, you collect your exit tickets at the end of each block. And I know that you do. You analyze them at some point during your planning or maybe even at home. When you see that your scholars have not given you an exemplar response, what are next steps in your process? So, for example, you do this on Monday. What happens on Tuesday?
Okay, so I collect my stickies off my parking lot. I see that half the class or there are students that are really confused. My steps are to think about what I'm doing the next day and see if sometimes these learning objectives are very similar.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. So if the learning objective for Monday is very close or even the same some days, because some days they will repeat as Monday, then I feel like at that point it'll take me maybe 1 or 2 seconds to make a quick correction.
Okay.
And then double check behind with those specific students. In the event that the learning objective is totally different, which I really highly doubt, but let's just say for some reason it is, my learning objective, we just totally did a 180. So I would then, those particular students, I could have a conference with them in particular about what they missed, something that might take me only 5 minutes. Sometimes you just ask a question. It could be, the responses from my students could be, I didn't have enough time to finish your 3-2-1.
Gotcha. I'm going to home in. I'm going to try to come in as close as possible. So for those of you viewing this, the 3-2-1, like for 3, she says, write 3 items listed on the forming evidence-based claims, which is a graphic organizer provided by Expeditionary Learning. The 2 would be to write, I'm sorry, it's fading away now. Let me go. Write the 2 learning objectives.
And the last one would be write a question that you had about today's lesson.
So with those, do you think you're getting exemplar responses from scholars? Like give us some examples of responses that you would typically get from your scholars.
Well, if I ask them to write 3 items listed on the form and evidence-based claims graphic organizer, the first thing they should give me is a focus question.
Okay.
Because that's something I circle, I repeat, I stress. So I should definitely get that. I could get a quote, and I should get what am I thinking.
Gotcha. So here's my push and my action step for you, since you've done an awesome job with this. Now that you're getting those responses from students, when you find the exemplars in your classes, can you start sharing them with other scholars in classes so that they can see some of the responses from their peers? So you can take the names off and say, if you're talking to your first block, show them an exemplar from your 4th block.
But what I usually do is I ask the students to put their initials on.
Oh, okay.
If we're using a sticky, chances are we don't have that much room.
Gotcha.
So even the exit ticket is usually done on a sticky.